All right, last thing before we wrap up this application for the time being. Let's go ahead and import our not found error from our ./utils/errors file. And let's create a simple middleware here at the very end of our pipeline. We'll say app.use, and then we'll have an asynchronous function. This function probably doesn't need to be asynchronous again, but I get in the habit of doing that mainly because if we want to perform any asynchronous actions, it's nice to have it there. So essentially all this is doing, and let's actually comment this just so that we know exactly what it is. This will handle all 404 errors that weren't matched by a route. So if something is sent to an endpoint that we haven't listed here in any of these, we want to handle it with an explicit 404 error. So we'll just return the next function with a new not found error. And all this does is it's calling the next function in our pipeline to make sure that if we haven't sent a response back by this point, then pass this on to whatever is next in the middleware cycle so that it can send back the proper error. And then finally, we'll have one last middleware, and let's actually comment this one too. This will be just a generic error handler. Anything that is unhandled by this point, if we haven't sent back a response, anything that is unhandled will be handled here. It's not the most elegant way to say that, but it's fine. It'll do for now. We'll say app.use, a request, response, next, and this will actually take in an error first. So if an error has been sent by this point, this will handle that appropriately. And honestly, these aren't asynchronous functions, so I'm actually just going to make them not async. And that's fine. And if the error will be the first parameter passed to this function, and so we can basically take this error and send it back to the user with the appropriate response. So we'll say something like return res.status, and it will be error.status, or yeah, let's just call that error. It'll be error.status, or if we didn't give it a proper error and we didn't handle it correctly, we'll just say 500, which means internal server error, which means we just didn't handle something correctly here, something is wrong in our application, and we're not exactly sure what it is. And then we'll send back some JSON with an error in it, and the message will be error.message, and the status will be error.status or 500, like that. Now, since we're duplicating this here, it might even be smarter to just say const status equals error.status or 500, and then use status here. Status, and then let's just say status, like so. And then just for good measure, let's also say message equals error.message, and then we'll just say message like this. So we're sending back some JSON no matter what. If something isn't handled by this point in our application, this middleware will take that, it'll look for the error here. If no error is passed in, it'll give it a 500 status and there'll be no message. And then we'll finally return something back to the user with the status we've determined and some JSON that just lists out the error for us. Now, when we do this and we run our server, we can then head back over to our client and we can try out a few things. We can make sure that voting works as we expect it to. Cool, that works. Now, if we vote again with the same user for the same pizza type, let's see what happens. We get an error that says that user has already voted for that pizza with a status of 400. If we don't pass in a user and we send it, we'll get one that says, you must have a user in that request body to vote. If we, what was the other error? Oh, if we look for a pizza type that doesn't exist, something like doesn't, or no pizza, and we send it, we get an error that says that pizza name is not part of the poll. And if we send it to a route that doesn't exist, something like nope, and we send that, we'll just get a generic error message that says not found. And this is much more explicitly handling any errors that are happening in our application because of the way Express matches requests, responses, and handles errors. And so this is a much more robust system, and it sets the foundation for building more complicated applications in the future. But for the time being, this should set a foundation and a framework for building future applications in Express, and hopefully this helps you start off on the right foot.